The morning sun painted streaks of orange across the desert sky as Captain Jack Stone guided his experimental aircraft higher into the atmosphere. At 85,000 feet, the curvature of Earth became visible, and the sky shifted from light blue to an ever-darkening purple. The X-89 Starcross prototype responded to his every command like it was an extension of his own body. "Control, this is Stone. Maintaining steady climb at Mach 3.2, he reported, his voice calm despite pushing the boundaries of human flight. The thin air at this altitude would have killed a normal person, but the X-89's advanced life support systems kept him alive and alert. The response from ground control came through with a hint of static. "Copy that, Stone. You're approaching the test ceiling. Prepare to level off at 90,000 feet. Stone smiled slightly. After 20 years of flying everything from crop dusters to the most advanced jets on Earth, this was what he lived for. The moment when human determination pushed past what seemed possible. The instrument panel in front of him displayed a perfect array of green lights. The experimental engine purred like a satisfied cat, converting the thin atmosphere into thrust more efficiently than any previous human-made engine. Stone had helped design some of its systems himself, combining his practical experience with the theories of the best engineers on the project. That's when he heard it. At first, it was just a faint whisper in his headset, barely distinguishable from background noise. But it grew stronger. A pulsing signal unlike anything he'd encountered in his thousands of hours of flight time. "Control, I'm picking up an anomalous signal. Are you getting this?" Stone adjusted his communications array, trying to clean up the transmission. "Negative, Captain. All frequencies are clear on our end." The controller's voice carried a note of concern. The signal changed, becoming more distinct. It wasn't random noise. It had a pattern. 3 short pulses, followed by a longer tone, repeated in a sequence that was too regular to be natural interference. Stone's heartbeat quickened as he realized what he might be hearing. "Control, request permission to investigate signal source." Reading it stronger at higher altitude. He knew what the answer would be, but he had to ask. "Negative, Stone. Maximum test altitude is non-negotiable. Begin descent procedures." The signal pulsed again, stronger this time. Stone's instruments showed it coming from somewhere above him, just at the edge of his sensor range. 20 years of instincts told him this wasn't just another test anomaly. This was something else. "Control, I'm picking up what appears to be a pattern in the signal. It's..." He paused, watching as his computer began decoding the pulses. "It's mathematical. Prime numbers being broadcast in sequence. Captain Stone, your orders are to descend immediately. This test flight is terminated." Stone looked up through his canopy at the darkening sky above. Prime numbers were universal. They were the same in any language, any counting system, anywhere in the universe. If someone wanted to make first contact, this was exactly how they'd do it. "Control, I'm experiencing some interference," he said, his hand steady on the controls as he began to pitch the nose up instead of down. "Your last transmission was unclear. Captain Stone, do not." He reached over and adjusted his radio, letting static fill the channel. The X-89 responded perfectly as he pushed it higher, past the tested limits. The signal grew stronger with each 1,000 feet of altitude gained. His oxygen systems were operating at maximum capacity, and warning lights began to flash about the thinning atmosphere. But Stone had spent his life pushing boundaries. He'd earned his position as Earth's top test pilot by knowing exactly how far he could push both machine and man. And right now, every instinct he'd developed over his career told him this signal was important. Maybe the most important thing humanity would ever encounter. As his altimeter passed 100,000 feet, the mathematical sequence in the signal changed. Now it wasn't just broadcasting. It was asking for help. Stone smiled again, tightening his grip on the controls. "Well," he muttered to himself, "let's go see who needs a hand." The X-89's engine strained against the thin atmosphere as Stone pushed past 120,000 feet. His radar display flickered with interference, but the mysterious signal grew stronger with each passing second. Warning lights flashed across his console, reminding him that no human aircraft was designed to fly this high. Then he saw it. Through the darkening sky, a shape emerged that made Stone's breath catch in his throat. It was massive, at least 3 times the size of his aircraft, with a silvery hull that seemed to shift colors like oil on water. The craft's design defied everything he knew about aerodynamics, with curves and angles that should have been impossible for any flying machine. "My God," Stone whispered, his experienced eyes quickly noting signs of damage across the vessel's surface. Deep scorch marks marred one side, and what looked like engine ports flickered with unstable energy. His radio crackled to life, but instead of ground control's angry demands, he heard a new sound. It was like music made of mathematics, rising and falling tones that his onboard computer immediately began trying to decode. Stone activated his aircraft's external lights, flashing them in the same pattern as the mathematical sequence he'd received earlier. The alien ship's pulsing changed in response, matching his rhythm. "Okay," he said to himself, "let's try something simple." He switched his lights to binary code, flashing out the first 10 numbers of the Fibonacci sequence, a mathematical pattern that any advanced civilization would recognize. The response was immediate. The alien ship's lights danced in a complex pattern, completing the sequence and adding the next 5 numbers. Stone couldn't help but smile. Mathematics truly was a universal language. But his smile faded as he got a closer look at the ship's condition. The damage was worse than he'd first thought. The vessel's hull rippled with waves of distortion, like heat waves off hot asphalt, but at these temperatures and altitude, that shouldn't have been possible. His instruments went crazy as he edged closer. The gravitational sensors, designed to warn of atmospheric turbulence, showed readings that made no sense. It was as if the space around the alien ship was being twisted, stretched, and compressed all at once. A new pattern of lights caught his attention. Using his flight computer to analyze it, Stone realized the aliens were transmitting images, simple geometric shapes that quickly became more complex, forming what looked like technical diagrams. They showed their ship, with red pulses highlighting the damaged areas. "You're trying to show me what's wrong," Stone muttered, studying the patterns. His computer translated more of the signal, revealing that the ship's main drive system was critically damaged. Whatever technology they used for propulsion was becoming unstable, creating the gravitational distortions he was detecting. Stone ran quick calculations in his head. At this rate of deterioration, the alien ship had maybe 30 minutes before its drive system failed completely. If that happened this close to Earth, he didn't want to imagine the consequences. A new series of lights flashed from the vessel, and this time the message was clear even without computer translation. It showed 5 humanoid figures inside the ship, followed by universal danger symbols. 5 crew members, Stone said, and they're in trouble. His radio crackled again, ground control finally breaking through. "Captain Stone, you are ordered to return immediately. We're tracking an unknown object near your position. Military response teams are en route." Stone looked at the alien ship, its hull now visibly vibrating from the failing drive system. He thought about the 5 lives aboard, beings who had crossed the stars only to find themselves trapped and dying above an unfamiliar world. He reached for his radio switch, but paused. Below him, Earth's surface was starting to sparkle with the lights of dawn. Somewhere down there, people were making decisions based on fear and protocol. But up here, things were simpler. Someone needed help, and he was in a position to give it. Stone turned off his radio. "All right," he said, beginning to signal back to the alien vessel. "Let's figure out how to get you folks home." Stone's eyes widened as his instrument panel lit up with new warnings. The alien ship's failing drive system was creating waves of gravitational distortion that grew stronger by the minute. His experimental aircraft shuddered as another wave passed through it, making the metal groan in protest. Through the distortions in the air, He could now see movement inside the alien vessel's transparent sections. The beings inside were tall and slender, their movements quick but precise despite their situation. They wore what looked like environmental suits that gleamed with soft light, probably protecting them from their ship's failing systems. His computer beeped as it finished translating more of their signals. The aliens had managed to send technical data about their ship's condition. Stone studied the readings with growing concern. Their life support was failing faster than the drive system, giving them less than 20 minutes of breathable atmosphere. "That complicates things," he muttered, watching another ripple of distortion pass between the vessels. The alien ship's drive core was like nothing he had ever seen. It somehow bent space itself to move through the universe. But now it was damaged, and those same space-bending forces were tearing the ship apart. A new sound cut through his cockpit, the distinctive tone of military aircraft approaching. Stone checked his radar to see 4 Air Force interceptors climbing rapidly toward his position. His radio crackled to life again. "Unknown aircraft and Captain Stone. This is Colonel Reed of the Air Force Space Defense Command. You are ordered to descend immediately. This is your only warning." Stone squared his shoulders, keeping his aircraft steady despite another wave of distortion. "Colonel, this is Captain Stone. We have a rescue situation here. There are 5 crew members aboard that vessel, and their life support is failing. Captain, that craft is an unknown threat to national security. Descend now, or we will be forced to take action." Before Stone could respond, his sensors screamed a warning. The alien ship's drive core was surging, sending out the strongest gravitational wave yet. His aircraft bucked violently, systems flickering as the wave passed through it. Through the canopy, he saw the alien vessel shudder, pieces of its outer hull starting to tear away. The aliens' next transmission was filled with urgent mathematical patterns. They were losing control of the drive system. If it failed completely, the resulting gravitational backlash would destroy both their ship and his aircraft, maybe even causing damage to the Earth below. "Colonel," Stone said firmly, "that ship's drive is going critical. If it fails, the explosion will be visible from the ground, and debris will rain down on populated areas. I'm the only one in position to help." There was a long pause on the radio. Stone used the time to study the X-89 systems. The experimental shield technology they'd been testing was designed to protect against extreme conditions. It wasn't meant for this, but maybe. "You have 10 minutes, Captain," Colonel Reed finally responded. "After that, we're shooting both craft down before they become a greater threat." Stone nodded grimly. "Copy that, Colonel. 10 minutes." He turned his attention back to the alien vessel, his mind racing through possibilities. The ship's size and the failing drive system made traditional rescue impossible. They couldn't abandon their ship. The vacuum and cold at this altitude would kill them instantly, and his aircraft wasn't equipped for docking. But the X-89's experimental shield system gave him an idea. It was absolutely crazy, the kind of thing that would make his flight instructors scream in horror. But as another gravitational wave rocked his aircraft, Stone knew it was their only chance. He began signaling to the alien crew, using mathematics and simple diagrams to explain his plan. Their response came quickly, a pattern that his computer translated as both understanding and disbelief. They thought it was impossible. Stone allowed himself a small smile as he began preparing his aircraft systems. "Impossible is what humans do best," he said to himself, and started the most daring rescue attempt in human history. Stone's fingers flew across the X-89's control panel, making adjustments that its designers had never imagined. The experimental shield system had been created to protect against high-speed flight and extreme temperatures, but he was about to use it in a completely different way. "Shield power diverted to forward projectors," he muttered, watching the energy readings climb. "Now for the tricky part." Another gravitational wave from the alien ship's failing drive rocked his aircraft. Stone compensated automatically, his 20 years of flight experience showing in every smooth movement. He'd learned long ago that flying wasn't about fighting the forces around you. It was about working with them. That's when he had his second idea. You're not fighting it enough. He signaled to the alien crew, using his lights to transmit mathematical equations, showing how their ship was trying to counteract the gravitational waves. Work with the waves instead. The aliens' response showed confusion at first, then understanding. Their ship's erratic movements began to smooth out as they adjusted their approach, riding the waves of distorted space instead of fighting against them. Stone smiled. That's it. Now let's try something crazy. He activated the X-89's shield projectors at full power. The blue-white energy field sprang to life around his aircraft, but instead of forming its usual protective bubble, it stretched forward in a long cone shape. The shield's power readings immediately went into the red zone. "Come on, baby," Stone said softly, adjusting the shield's frequency. "Just hold together for a few minutes." His plan was theoretically simple but incredibly dangerous. The X-89's shield would act as a stable tunnel between the two ships, protecting against both the vacuum of near space and the gravitational distortions. But one wrong move, one power fluctuation, and both ships would be torn apart. The military interceptors circled below, maintaining their distance but ready to act if anything went wrong. Colonel Reed's voice crackled over the radio. 7 minutes remaining, Captain." Stone ignored the warning, focusing entirely on his controls. The shield was holding, but the power drain was massive. The X-89's experimental engines whined as they struggled to maintain both the shield and the aircraft's position. He flashed his landing lights at the alien ship, signaling them to match his exact position and speed. Their response was impressive. Despite their failing systems, they maneuvered with incredible precision, aligning their emergency hatch with his shield tunnel. The gravitational waves were getting stronger. Stone's arms shook as he fought to keep the X-89 steady. Sweat dripped down his forehead, despite the cockpit's cooling systems. This kind of precise flying at the edge of space, surrounded by forces that could rip his aircraft apart, was pushing even his legendary skills to their limit. But it was working. Through the distorted air, he could see the alien crew preparing their emergency hatch. His shield tunnel was providing just enough stability for them to work. Warning lights flashed across his panel. The X-89's engines were overheating, and the shield generators were approaching critical levels. They would only get one chance at this. Now or never, Stone signaled to the aliens, adding a simple mathematical sequence that meant ready. The aliens responded with their own ready signal. Their emergency hatch began to open, revealing a short corridor that led into their ship. The difference in pressure should have explosively decompressed their vessel, but Stone's shield tunnel held, creating a stable pathway between the two craft. Stone took a deep breath, his hand steady on the controls despite the incredible forces trying to tear the ships apart. Everything depended on maintaining perfect position for the next few minutes. The slightest deviation would collapse the shield tunnel and doom the alien crew. "All right," he said, watching the first alien figure prepare to cross through his makeshift bridge between the stars. "Let's make some history." The first alien stepped into the shield tunnel, its tall form moving with careful precision. Stone watched in amazement as the beam made its way through the blue-white energy field that connected the two ships. The alien's environmental suit glowed softly, creating strange patterns where it met the shield's energy. "Easy does it," Stone muttered, making micro-adjustments to keep the X-89 perfectly steady. Another gravitational wave hit, stronger than before. The alien stumbled but kept moving, clearly understanding that any sudden movement could collapse their fragile bridge between ships. Stone's radio crackled. 5 minutes remaining, Captain, Colonel Reed warned from below. The first alien reached Stone's aircraft, finding handholds on the emergency hatch he had prepared. Stone had redesigned the X-89's rear compartment during its development, arguing that a rescue capacity was essential for any experimental aircraft. Now that decision was about to save 5 lives from across the stars. A second alien entered the shield tunnel, followed quickly by a third. They moved faster now, having seen their companion make it safely across. Stone's arms ached from maintaining the precise control needed to keep the shield tunnel stable, but he didn't dare engage the autopilot. This kind of flying required human instinct and experience that no computer could match. The fourth alien was halfway across when the alien ship's drive core surged again. Warning lights flashed across Stone's panel as gravitational waves hammered both vessels. The shield tunnel flickered dangerously. No, Stone growled, his hands dancing across the controls. He diverted emergency power to the shields, fighting to maintain the tunnel's integrity. The X-89's engines screamed in protest as he pushed them beyond their tested limits. The fourth alien made it across just as another alarm added to the chaos in Stone's cockpit. The shield generators were overheating. They had maybe 2 minutes before the whole system failed. But the fifth alien, who Stone now recognized from the signals as the ship's captain, wasn't moving toward the tunnel. Instead, they were working frantically at a control panel inside their vessel. Stone's computer translated their next transmission. The drive core was about to breach. If that happened, the resulting gravitational explosion would tear a hole in the atmosphere and devastate everything below. "Get out of there," Stone signaled urgently, but the alien captain's response was clear. Someone had to stay behind to initiate the emergency containment sequence. Stone looked at his instruments, at the 4 aliens safely secured in his rear compartment, at the military jets circling below. He thought about the millions of people living in the blast radius of a drive core breach. Then he did what any pilot would do. He made a split-second decision. "Keep that tunnel stable," he signaled to the alien captain. Before they could respond, Stone activated his emergency air supply and unstrapped from his seat. The X-89's advanced autopilot engaged, programmed with Stone's last few minutes of flight data. It wouldn't be as precise as human control, but it only had to hold for a few moments. Stone moved quickly to his aircraft's emergency hatch. The alien captain's signals became urgent, warning him to stay back. But Stone had spent his career ignoring warnings about what was and wasn't possible. He took a deep breath, checked his oxygen supply, and stepped into the shield tunnel. The energy field tingled against his flight suit as he began moving toward the alien ship. Each step had to be perfect, too fast, and he'd destabilized the tunnel. Too slow, and they'd run out of time. "Colonel," he radioed as he moved, "I'm going to need an extra couple of minutes up here." The response was immediate. "Negative, Captain. Return to your aircraft now." Stone smiled slightly as he made his way through the swirling energy field. "Sorry, Colonel. You're breaking up." The alien ship's emergency hatch grew closer, and beyond it, Stone could see the alien captain still working desperately at their controls. The drive core's containment was failing. They had minutes at most. "Time to show these folks what humans can really do," Stone said to himself, and pushed forward into the failing alien ship. The alien ship's interior was bathed in pulsing red light as Stone entered through the emergency hatch. His boots magnetized automatically to the metal floor, keeping him steady despite the gravitational waves that shook the vessel. The alien captain turned to face him, their tall form radiating both surprise and concern. "I didn't come all this way to watch you die," Stone said, even though he knew they couldn't understand his words. He pointed to himself, then the control panel, then made a motion like turning a key. The universal sign for "let me help." Another violent shake rocked the ship. Through the transparent walls of the control room, Stone could see the drive core's chamber. The device looked like a sphere of liquid metal, but it twisted in ways that hurt his eyes to watch. Cracks of bright energy sparked across its surface. The alien captain seemed to understand Stone's intention. They quickly moved to one side of the control panel, gesturing for Stone to take the other position. Their long fingers flew across the alien symbols, bringing up what looked like a shutdown sequence. Stone's experienced eyes studied the display. 20 years of flying experimental aircraft had taught him that all ships, no matter their origin, followed certain basic principles. Power systems needed to be shut down in sequence. Emergency protocols had to be followed in order. The alien captain pointed to a series of symbols that flashed in a repeated pattern. Stone recognized it as the same mathematical sequence they'd used to communicate earlier. This was their language's version of a countdown. 3 minutes, Stone muttered, watching the symbols change. Okay, let's do this. Working together, human and alien began the shutdown sequence. The captain would input a command, then point to where Stone needed to respond on his side of the panel. Each successful step made the symbols flash green, but the drive core's containment was failing faster than they could power it down. 2 minutes left. The gravitational waves were getting stronger. Through the windows, Stone could see his X-89 struggling to maintain position, its shield tunnel flickering as the autopilot fought against the increasing distortions. The alien captain's next signal was clear. The containment system wasn't responding fast enough. At this rate, the core would breach before they could shut it down. They needed another solution. Stone studied the alien controls, his mind racing. The problem wasn't just the core's power. It was the way it was breaking down. The gravitational waves were fighting against their attempts to contain them. Then he remembered what he told the aliens earlier about their ship's movement. Don't fight the waves. Work with them. Stone pointed to the containment field controls, then made a wave motion with his hand. The alien captain tilted their head, then their eyes widened in understanding. Instead of trying to suppress the gravitational waves, they could use them to help collapse the core in on itself. 1 minute remaining. The alien captain's fingers moved with incredible speed, reconfiguring the containment field. Stone watched the symbols, waiting for his moment. Timing would be crucial. Now, he shouted as the biggest wave yet hit the ship. Stone slammed his hand down on the alien controls, activating the modified containment field at exactly the right moment. The wave's energy fed back into the drive core, forcing it to implode rather than explode. The ship shuddered violently. Warning lights flashed everywhere as systems began to fail. The alien captain grabbed Stone's arm, pulling him toward the emergency hatch. Their message was clear. They had seconds to escape. Stone took one last look at the drive core as they ran. The sphere of liquid metal was collapsing inward, drawn into itself by its own gravitational field. It was working, but the ship was coming apart around them. They reached the shield tunnel just as the floor began to break up beneath their feet. The alien captain pushed Stone forward, both of them knowing it was going to be a very close race to safety. Stone and the alien captain raced through the shield tunnel as the alien ship began to break apart behind them. The energy field flickered dangerously, stressed by the increasing gravitational distortions. Each step had to be perfectly timed to avoid destabilizing their precarious bridge between the vessels. The X-89's autopilot was fighting to maintain position, its engines straining against forces they were never designed to handle. Through the swirling energy of the shield tunnel, Stone could see pieces of the alien ship's hull peeling away into space. Almost there. Stone gasped, his emergency oxygen supply running low. The alien captain moved beside him, their longer strides naturally faster, but they matched Stone's pace instead of rushing ahead. Even facing death, they refused to leave their human rescuer behind. A massive shock wave hit as the drive core finally imploded. The shield tunnel wavered, threatening to collapse. Stone felt the artificial gravity shift and roll beneath his feet. He stumbled, but the alien captain's quick reflexes caught him, their strong grip keeping him steady. Together, they made the final dash to the X-89's emergency hatch. They practically fell into the aircraft's rear compartment, where the other 4 aliens helped pull them to safety. Stone immediately scrambled to the cockpit, taking control back from the autopilot, just as the alien ship disappeared in a flash of imploding energy. The shock wave hit them hard, but Stone was ready. He rolled the X-89 with the wave instead of against it, using the energy to push them to a safer distance. The aircraft's shields finally failed, but they had served their purpose. All 6 of them, 5 aliens and 1 human, were alive. Captain Stone. Colonel Reed's voice crackled over the radio, a new tone of respect evident. Status report. Stone looked back at his passengers. The alien captain gave him what he somehow knew was a thumbs-up gesture, despite their very different anatomy. The other 4 aliens were safely strapped in, their environmental suits maintaining their atmosphere. All secure, Colonel. Stone reported. 5 survivors rescued. Request immediate clearance to land at Edwards Air Force Base. Our friends here might need some technical support for their environmental suits. There was a long pause before the colonel responded. Clearance granted, Captain. You've got quite a story to tell at the debriefing. Stone smiled as he guided the X-89 into its descent path. The alien captain moved forward to the cockpit area. Their suit's translation system now configured to communicate in basic English. Our people, the captain's translated voice came through with mechanical precision, had judged Earth too primitive for contact. We believed your species needed centuries more development before you would be ready to join the galactic community. Stone adjusted their flight path, compensating for the extra weight of his passengers. And now we understand that we were measuring the wrong things. Your technology may be young, but your spirit. The alien captain paused, looking at the improvised shield tunnel controls Stone had rigged. Your courage, your creativity, your willingness to risk everything to help unknown beings. These are the true measures of a civilization's greatness. As they descended through the atmosphere, the first rays of sunrise painted the sky in brilliant colors. Stone could see the landing strip at Edwards being cleared for their arrival. Military vehicles and what looked like scientific teams were already gathering. So, what happens now? Stone asked, genuinely curious about humanity's future. The alien captain's translation came through with what sounded like amusement. Now, Captain Stone, your real adventure begins. Earth has proven itself ready for the stars in the most meaningful way possible, not through technology, but through the actions of one of its finest pilots. They gestured to the gathering below. Your world will never be the same. Stone grinned as he began their final approach. Well then, he said, let's go make some history together. The X-89 descended toward the dawn of a new era, carrying with it the proof that humanity's greatest strength wasn't in its machines or weapons, but in the unshakable spirit of its people. And high above, where the alien ship had been, the stars seemed to shine just a little brighter, welcoming Earth to a much larger universe.